Welcome to the second chapter of the Book of Haggai the prophet. The glory of the house. The house, originally, the temple, was built by Solomon, prepared by King David, and it lasted for hundreds of years until Nebuchadnezzar came and took all the things out of the house, probably destroyed quite a bit of it. Is basically made of wood. And now with the return of the captives, it's mentioned in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, we went through that on a timeline, it now is being a subject for Haggai the prophet. It says, in the 7th month, 21st day of the month, came to pass the word of the Lord by the hand of Haggai the prophet. Now this is probably the second year, because I think in the last chapter it mentioned the second year of King Darius. It's in Persia. And he said, "Speak indeed to Zerubbabel, the son of Salathiel, from out of the tribe of Judah, and to Esun, the son of Iosadek, the Iereah, Ton Megan, the great priest, and to all the ones left of the people." So now the subject jumps to Zerubbabel and Joshua. We went through them a little in the timeline, Zerubbabel and Joshua, but we'll hear now more of these, mainly Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was the man who, remembered, led the people out of Babylon into Jerusalem. Nehemiah, I think, was the first to go and checked it all out, came back, and then I believe this people started going from Babylon into Jerusalem. Nehemiah started rebuilding the wall of the city of Jerusalem, and Joshua, Zerubbabel, and Ezra, they were all tied in to the temple. And now we see what God says. He questions, he says, "Who is there from out of you who beheld this house in the former glory of it?" That is, who is still alive that was taken captive and saw the house. "And how do you see it now? Is it as not existing before you? It must have been in sorry state when they returned." But it says, "And now take strength, O Zerubbabel, says the Lord, and take strength, O Joshua, son of Josedek, the great priest." So take strength. We're going to do something. God's going to do something with you. "And let all the people of the land grow strong, says the Lord, and act." So this was all at the time when they returned. "For I am with you, says the Lord Almighty." And there are other people that were against the Jews, Sanballat and Tobiah, people of the land that were displaced from other parts of the world by the kings of Assyria and Babylon. "The word which I ordained with you in your coming forth from out of Egypt, and my spirit I set in the midst of you. Take courage." God's relating how he did miraculous things with Moses and coming out of Egypt. So if he can do it with them, he can do it with you, more or less them. And he can do it also with us. "For thus says Kyrios Pantokrator, Almighty." Pan is all and Krat might. "Still once more I will shake the heaven and the earth and the sea and the dry land." Now, what period of time is he talking about? Shaking the heaven, the earth, the sea, and the dry land. Now, this was quoted, we'll go down and see it right here in Hebrews 12:26. And then he said, "I will shake all the nations, and the chosen ones of all the nations shall come. Well, this probably has nothing to do with the condition at the time of Zerubbabel, because of all the nations, there weren't that many people taken that would be returning from all these nations. So to me, is showing that in the future that there is going to be a gathering of the nations, and the chosen ones of all the nations shall come. Now, which ones is he talking about? Jews that are scattered all over, and they're all came back for Rome, basically, at this time, or when Rome took all the people, sent them throughout the world, and the nations, then he's going to bring all these people back. And yes, that could be very well the case. 1948, Israel became a country again. People started coming from all over the world, called Aliyah, and they still are today, 2023, almost 2024. But the chosen ones of all the nations, so it doesn't say like all. So, and he says, and I will fill this house with glory, says the Lord Almighty. Now, I look at this as a reference to Jesus. The temple, Jesus, is going to be filled with glory. And the people that are going to be gathered could possibly be referring to the people being gathered in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 at the beginning. He continues, and mine is the silver, and mine is the gold, says the Lord Almighty. He controls everything, all material wealth. For great will be the glory of this house, the last one above the first, says the Lord Almighty. Now, this house, the glory of this house, the last one above the first. Well, this house at that time, he's telling, was all messed up. Now, did they make it so it was better than the first house that they're repairing? I don't think that's what he's saying. The last one could either be talking about the Lord, or it could be talking about the future house in the last 9 chapters of the book of Ezekiel. And in this place I will establish peace. I don't see peace today. There's war going on, terrible wars. Could turn into a worldwide conflagration. This being, I believe, the 21st of December, 2023. Hope I got it right this time. Says the Lord Almighty, even peace of soul for the procurement to everyone creating to raise up this temple. Now, that could be raising up Jesus, or a temple in the future. Could be referring to more than one thing. You can kind of look at this and say, well, this fits this. And then another person could look and say, well, no, it fits this over here. And then the third point, oh, no, it fits this one over here. So the thing is, people see what they want to see. However they want to see it, maybe hopefully God leads them to see the things the way he would want them to see it. Now, I have people writing me wanting to dispute certain things that I have come up with, and that's fine, but I don't want my site to be some type of a podium for people to come up with all kinds of things on their own. If that's the case, then they should have their own website and go through the Bible themselves. So the peace of soul, now it goes into a change. It says, in the 4th and 20th day, in the 9th month, in the 2nd year, unto Darius. So a little bit later, came to pass the word of the Lord to Haggai ton prophetin, saying, Thus says the Lord Almighty, Ask indeed of the priests concerning the law, saying, this is, I put this in here, the law I didn't, but concerning the law, saying, now this is sort of getting at the time of Halakha being developed at the beginning, and we mentioned that in our last video in the timeline. If a man took holy meat by the tip of his garment, and there should touch the tip of his garment some bread, or stew, or wine, or olive oil, or any food, shall it be sanctified. And this is sort of what the Mishnah goes through. It says things like this. And the priests answered and said, no, it's not going to be sanctified just because it touches it. And Haggai said, well, if one being defiled should touch upon a dead soul of any of these, so you're defiled because you're touching the dead soul, dead person, body, shall he be defiled? And these things? And the priest answered and said, he shall be defiled, or it shall be defiled. And Haggai answered and said, so this people and so this nation is before me, defiled. I look at what I see in 24:4 in this Jeremiah. It says, and came to pass the word of the Lord to me, saying, thus says the Lord God of Israel, as these figs, these better figs, so shall I recognize the Jews being resettled, whom I have sent out from out of this place, into the land of the Chaldeans of Babylon for good. And I shall firmly fix my eyes upon them for good, and I shall restore them into the land, this land. And I will rebuild them, and in no way demolish, and I will plant them, and in no way will I pluck them out. Well, they were plucked out by the Romans later. So now, exactly what time here? The resettlement. So it sounds like it's later, because they are plucked out. And then it says, and I will give them a heart for them to know me, that I am the Lord. They didn't know Jesus, crucified him, so they didn't know the Lord. 2,000 years later, Israel's back again. Does Israel know the Lord today? Question. And they will be to me for a people, and I will be to them for God. So great. If the people coming back, like the Jews in 1948 and today, were of knowing the Lord, then for they shall turn towards me from out of their entire heart. I do not see that personally, so I'm questioning if this is for a future time. And as the bad figs, now he goes into bad figs, which shall not be eaten because of their badness. Thus says the Lord, so will I deliver up Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his great men at the end of the kingdom, the last king, and the rest of Jerusalem being left behind in this land, and the ones dwelling in Egypt. Now, that's interesting, even the ones that were in Egypt, probably from fleeing earlier. And I will appoint them for being dispersed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Now, the dispersal of all the people, I look at, if this dispersal was the conditions for the dispersal at this time, which is really not for sure, could very well be for now, because they have come back. But it says they will be for scorning, and for a parable, and for hatred, and for a curse in every place where I shall push them there. And I look at the Jews in 2,000 years, all they have to do, and they blame Christians for all the bad things happening to them, and maybe rightfully so in some places, and Muslims and other people. I don't really see them too much blaming themselves for walking away from God, for crucifying Christ. They're still in the same bad place. So they're going to be for hatred, for a curse in every place where I shall push them there. Boy, they sure are that today. In most of the world, people are coming against, call it anti-Semitism. Even Jews are against the Jews. They're called auto-anti-Semites. And we have people in the United States that are Jewish, that are going and protesting against Israel's attack against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And the Jews are against Israel for doing that. So they are auto-anti-Semites. And I will send against them the famine and the plague and the sword until whenever they they should fail from the land which I gave to them and to their fathers. And I sort of look at this, what's going on today could really turn out badly. But there's a lot of things that could happen. The man of sin I'm waiting for, of 2 Thessalonians 2, and he will come back, and the chosen will be taken, and so forth. And then going back to Haggai in verse 14, and Haggai answered and said, well, so this people and so this nation is before me, says the Lord, and so all the works of their hands, and whoever should approach there shall be defiled. And because of their concerns of the early morning burdens, the things of God that didn't like them, they shall grieve from in front of their wickednesses. And you detested the ones reproving at the doors. The prophets coming. I look at Israel today, the wickedness that's going on, lining it up. All you have to do is go to the Jerusalem Post and the Times of Israel and Haaretz, and they'll show you the things that are going on in Israel. They're not concerned too much about God, I don't see. And now, set it indeed upon your hearts from this day and above. Now, what day this is it right now, or is it in the future? Like I said, one person could look at it one way, another in another way. Before putting stone upon stone in the temple of the Lord. Now, the stone upon stone is interesting because it sounds like it's almost like it was torn down to the ground, because basically the temple was made out of wood that I see. What you were when you put out into the granary 20 seahs of barley, and there existed only 10 seahs of barley, and you entered into the wine vat to draw out 50 measures, and there existed only 20 of wine, I struck you by non-productivity, and by being windblown, and by hail, upon all the works of your hands, and you turned not to me, says the Lord. So now this could be the condition today. But what is the solution? Arrange indeed your hearts from this day and beyond, from the 4th and the 20th and 9th month, and from the day of which the temple of the Lord was laid a foundation, establish it in your hearts. Well, it sounds like it's talking about at that time they were laying the foundation, but you could look at it again in the future foundation. Beyond, it says, indeed, arrange your hearts from this day and beyond, from the 4th and the 20th day. So the beyond could be this past it and this future foundation. Jesus, I believe, establish it in your heart. Shall yet it be recognized upon the threshing floor? And shall yet the grapevine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the trees of the olive not bearing fruit be recognized? From this day I shall bless. Now, what day is that? The day that Israel changes towards God. I believe it's not when they're rebelling against God or Christ is chosen. And it continues here, and it changes a little, some more. And it came to pass, the logos of the word, Lord, from a second time to Haggai the prophet, the 4th and 20th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, the son of Salathiel, from out of the tribe of Judah. He was not a Levite, saying, I shall shake the heaven and the earth and the sea and the dry land. All of this shaking of everything, I don't see it as happening yet. And I shall eradicate thrones of kings. I don't see that. And I shall annihilate the power of kings of the nations. I don't see that then at that time. Possibly, but again, could look at it a couple of ways. And I shall eradicate chariots, armata, we get the word armaments from that, and riders. And there shall come down horses, and their riders, each by a broadsword against his brother. Now, what could that be? The brother to Israel, to me, are the Arabs. They came out of Ishmael. So they are brothers to the Jews, and they're fighting broadsword against a broadsword. I can't understand it. why Islam hates the Jews so much and why the Jews dislike Jews dislike Christians and the Muslims. So it's a interesting time we're living in now in 2023. And then it says, in that day, says the Lord Almighty, I will take you, Zerubbabel, the son of Salathiel, my bondman, says the Lord, and I will set you as a seal. For I have selected you, says the Lord Almighty. Well, now, what does it mean? He's setting him as a seal. It doesn't give us a whole lot of understanding about this. When we get into Zechariah, we will find out more, because Zechariah gives us way more information about Zerubbabel. But let's go to the New Testament. And a lot of people think Zerubbabel is one of these, the two witnesses. And I'll read this and you can look at it and see what you think. And it says in Revelation, and I will give to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, 3.5 years. Now, could this be after the man of sin arrives? And they're wearing sackcloths. And so they're basically, I think, coming against him. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands standing before the Lord of the earth. Now this we will see in Zechariah 4, when we go into Zechariah next. And it talks about Zerubbabel. And it continues, and if anybody wants to injure them, fire goes forth from out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone wants to injure them, thus must he be killed. These have authority to lock the heaven, that it should not rain the days of their prophecy, like with Elisha. It's interesting here, I point this out, rain. We have two English words which are the same, but for two Greek words, so it shows you how it's not always possible to translate a word always one certain way. Iatos is the rain, and the vreki is the raining of the rain. And they have authority over the waters to turn them into blood, as Moses. And they're going to have a lot of power, and to strike the earth with every calamity, as often as they should want. And whenever they should finish their witness, the wild beast descending from out of the abyss will make war with them. Probably the man of sin goes into the temple and proclaims himself as God. And he will overcome them and will kill them, and their corpses will be upon the square of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. And we know this is Jerusalem because it says where even their Lord was crucified. So we know that this is going to happen in Jerusalem right after the man of sin comes. And he calls it Sodom and Egypt, and I believe he could probably tie in Babylon there. And we'll see from out of the peoples and tribes and languages and nations their corpses 3 days and a half. So, and they will not allow their corpses to be put in a tomb. And the ones dwelling upon the earth will rejoice over them and will be glad and will send gifts to one another, for these two prophets tormented the ones dwelling upon the earth. And after 3 days and a half, breath of life from out of God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon the ones viewing them. And they heard a great voice from out of the heaven, saying to them, Ascend here. And they ascended into the heaven in the cloud, and their enemies viewed them. And in that day a great earthquake took place, and the tenth of the city fell, and were killed in the earthquake, the names of, and it goes on and on. So this, going up in a cloud, and Jesus went up in a cloud, he's coming back on a cloud. And very interesting chapter of a short book, Haggai. Now, at the same time that Haggai was writing this, Zechariah was writing his book, which is quite a bit longer. I believe it's 13 chapters, and we'll be going into that next. I hope you join us. Until then, God bless.